Ironwood Games. This is Andrew, and today we are going to be playing Sid Meier's Railroads. Um, that's another oldie but a goodie. Just installed this on this, so we're just going to go into the tutorial here. So it's loading up our tutorial. Here we go. Alright. Start in Baltimore. Welcome to Sid Meier's Railroads. Follow on closely and you'll learn everything you need to know to build the greatest rail empire you can imagine. Alright, let's start with moving around the world. You can navigate the world by moving the mouse to the edge of the screen or using the arrow keys on your keyboard. You can also click on the mini-map to jump to parts of the world. When you're comfortable with moving around the world, click next. So we see all of the things. Alright. Let's click next. You can also rotate and zoom the camera to get a better view of the world. Use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. To rotate the camera, hold down the mouse wheel and move the mouse left to right, or hold down the control key and use the arrow keys. Alright, so let's line this up here. Alright, and next. Left click on the lay track button. That's this one down here that's flashing. Now mouse over the track in Baltimore. Notice how the circle changes colors. Alright, so here we go. We go from red to this yellow to green if we go out front. All track must start from existing track. Red means you are not touching any existing track and therefore cannot start track at that location. Yellow means you are starting a track from an interior portion of the track, like so. And green means you're extending the end of an existing piece of track. Now click on the end of the track and move your mouse to the center of Washington and left click the mouse. So Washington is down here. So let's go from this end down to, I guess we get the center of Washington, they said. So, and you can see it kind of moves the city around and adjusts the structure of that. So let's build that there. So we click to start, we click to end. Now right click the mouse to exit track laying mode. Alright. Throughout the game, right clicking is commonly used to cancel an action or exit a mode. Awesome. Do you notice how our sling buildings moved out of the way for your track? In this game, the rails are king, and the world bends to their will. Now that you've built track inside Washington's connection zone, we should build a train depot station so that trains can load and unload cargo at this location. Left-click the Build Depot button. Move your mouse over the track in Washington. So the Build Depot has to be built along the track. So you can see we can slide it up here, and then once we get outside of the city, it won't let us place it there. Alright, so let's decide where we want to put it. Let's put it right, sure, in the center of town-ish. Excellent. Now you have a path from Baltimore to Washington that trains can use. You should buy a train to deliver goods between Baltimore and Washington. Mouse over Washington, note the goods that it supplies and demands. Alright, so we see... Oh, we're going to cancel that. We see here the supply is passengers and mail, I think are these, and then it demands passengers, mail, food, goods, cars, and paper. And do the same with Baltimore. Alright, and then so we'll go over to Baltimore and we'll see. So again, you're trying to set up routes between your cities to, meet your demands. Provide for the supply. So moving passengers and mail looks like the big thing here. Trying to both supply and demand passengers and mail. The visual size of a city can be used as a cue to some of the types of goods that it supplies and demands. Let's buy a train to deliver passengers and mail between Baltimore and Washington. Click the buy train button. Alright, so here we buy the train. Alright, this is the routing screen. The white circles represent depots that you have created. So it's these down here. Mouse over the circles until you find Baltimore. Left-click the mouse on the circle to set it as the first stop. So that's stop number 1. This is our route here. Now tell the train to make its next stop in Washington by left-clicking on the circle that represents the depot in Washington. All right, and our second stop then is the Washington Depot. Notice that the train is still outfitted with the train cars you added from Baltimore. The good these cars are carrying will be loaded and unloaded each time the train stops. So we didn't actually load it with anything from Baltimore. So this train is now set to deliver passengers and mail. So we have to go back here. Let's actually add a passenger car and a mail car. So now we can see from Baltimore, we're taking 2 passenger cars and a mail car to Washington, and from Washington, 2 passenger cars and a mail car. And I believe it's just going to go back and forth at this point. The train is now set to deliver mail back and forth between Washington and Baltimore. Buying a train for a new route, by default, the newest available train is selected for you. However, there are often situations where the latest train isn't really the best option. Make sure you consider speed, hauling power, and the route before committing to a train. Select a different locomotive. You can change the change button inside the colorful train image in the upper right. So here, these are locomotives that we have available to us. All right, and these numbers mean something, and I don't know what they mean yet. All right. So I think they're power, speed, and something. We're going to stick with this one because it's all we really have. We're going to hit OK to confirm the route. We'll just give it a priority, a normal priority. All right, watch your train as it delivers passengers and mail. So we see our train here. It loaded up. The red numbers that occasionally appear represent the train's maintenance cost. As the train ages, its maintenance costs will continually increase. Eventually, you will want to replace your old trains with newer ones. However, most newer trains have a higher starting maintenance cost, so you should evaluate the costs and benefits. The green numbers appearing near the train cars represent money you earned for delivery of that good. So we see as they're unloading, we earn some money here. The amount of money you make from mail and passengers are influenced by the distance traveled and the speed of delivery. The further and faster you travel, the more money you make. Other goods are not affected by speed and distance. Because of this, it's generally a good idea not to mix freight cars with mail and passenger cars. So we see it cost us $1,000, and then we made a good chunk of money here. Our train just flips around. And I think as we're in the tutorial, we just have kind of unlimited cash. So this is one of a kind of a remake or a reimagining of Sid Meier's old Railroad Tycoon games, the original kind of tycoon games where you're kind of managing an empire and just building it up, and it's almost kind of sandbox mode. In a lot of that, you get to kind of just explore around and do that. You get to have fun with trains. Okay, so you may have noticed you're getting more money for your deliveries in Baltimore than you are in Washington. That's because you have a better train station in Baltimore than you do in Washington. There are 3 classes of train stations: depots, stations, and terminals. Depots are the most basic train station you can buy. Stations and terminals get bonuses to mail and passenger deliveries. They also load and unload goods faster. Okay. Upgrade your depot in Washington by expanding into a station by left-clicking the depot. So we'll click on the depot. Now we're highlighting the depot down here. Left-clicking the upgrades button, which is here. And then we'll click the station. That will upgrade it to a station. Now buy another train until it delivers passengers and mail from Baltimore to Washington, just like the first train. All right. So we're going to buy another train. We'll send kind of the same setup here. It'll have the same engine. Click OK to create this train. And I think We're about to learn about whether or not on this difficulty the trains can exist on the same track. So we have two trains on the track and they've stopped each other. So even though they're both stopped, they're continually costing us money in the form of maintenance expend. We need to resolve this situation. So again, it's the tutorial. It kind of gives us all the scenarios and the setup we need to do this. So we're going to double track. So left click the double track button. This lets us, when we lay track, it had to be through existing track. The double track lets us lay track alongside existing track. So we're going to do that. Get a nice little passenger bridge. It is pretty nice that visually, even though the visuals are updated, or outdated, I apologize. It's got some nice effects, some nice things. We added the second track. It added a little passenger bridge here. We need to connect it back to the main line so the other trains can use it. So we're going to go lay track. And I think we do it this way. And this will give us a little bypass. And the thing here is we can make the bypass really short, or we can make it a little bit longer. You see it stretches out there, so let's make it kind of a medium length there. Now the train is going to be able to pull in, the other train is going to be able to take off, and kind of they can both use this track. Now you'll notice one of the trains is moving in while the other waits for that track to become free. Perhaps we should double track a section in Washington to further optimize our railway. So the other train loaded up passengers in Baltimore, but it can't take off because this track is occupied. Again, it puts these switches in for us automatically and manages all this. So if you see, this train here is going to be stuck in Baltimore until the other track becomes clear. So this common track that they're using, this switch prevents him from using that track. If he pulls into Baltimore, the other train will go. And this is going to be really rather slow because we're waiting for each trip to make a round trip before the next ones go. So that's where they're suggesting for us to build a double track in Washington. All right. So we can do this again on either side. It kind of adjusts everything as we go. And then again, we need to put a little switch back on here so that they can share. And this time, let's just put it right there. Now, the one thing that always has kind of bothered me on this is, as you can see, sometimes these little switch lights, if you don't do your switch overs real well, you end up with a lot of clutter just because of the kind of the AI and how it does it. It all works good. It's just kind of can be a little bit tricky when these are short little gaps. You can see we just have the one switch over here in Baltimore, but we have two here in DC. But now you can see the trains are going to be a little bit more efficient. Once one pulls into a station, the other one can go off and pull into the station. The first train will load up. Since it's going in the same direction, it can jump on, I think. Oh no, actually it's going to wait until that track is clear. There we go. And so we increased our efficiency just a little bit here. All right, so next our tutorial says we want to expand just a little bit more. So the village of Easton sits to the southeast of Baltimore. Zoom out. I think that's right over here. Yeah, there we go. You notice there's a paper mill industry there that converts lumber into paper. So we've got, yeah, they have a demand for lumber, but then they produce, you can see, from the lumber to paper. And then, of course, there's a lumber supply over here, a little timber company. All right, so we're going to lay track. Click on the track near Washington to build track from Washington to Easton. Notice how a bridge was built for you automatically. So again, we're going to go from somewhere over here. We'll pick our spot, and we're going to draw a little section off. Run through Easton. And I guess we'll end there. And we'll build a depot here. One of the other things to be aware of, because I have played this before, it's been a while, but the other thing to be aware of is the curves and these things. The tighter the curve, the slower the trains have to go around this curve. So even when you have a more powerful engine, it still gets kind of slowed down, bogged down on some of these curves. So you're planning out, as we'll see again from this lumber mill to here. Either we can take a nice long approach, or we can make it real tight here, and then it's going to be real slow moving in here. You'll also notice, like I was talking about, now that we have another pairing here, now we have 3 switches, little lights here, and it's just a visual thing. It usually works fine. Every once in a while you can kind of jam it up where you've just got a train stuck in between some switch offs, and you got to be careful with those. But once you kind of get the hang of it, it's fine. All right, so now we want to go, and it's asking us to lay track from here over to our lumber mill. And so again, this is where it's interesting. I said, we could make it real tight right around Easton, or we could bring this out through the hills, make a little tunnel here, and then loop it around to the lumber mill for a little smoother grade. And again, it does all this kind of automatically for you. Here, if we put it up on top of the hill, you're going to see it has a steep uphill, which is going to impact its speed going up, right? Versus if we put it low, it will cost more because we got to build this tunnel, right? But it's going to not have as much uphill and do that. So you're kind of considering all these different factors as you're doing it. What I kind of want to do is just cut through here. So I'm going to do it there, and then I'm going to actually bend it around a little bit steep here. And I like that. It builds a little bit, fills in that slope there. And we're going to do that. All right. And this way, it's a little tight here, but it's going to be a nice smooth transition in here into town. And now we need to get a depot at the lumber mill, so again we can load the goods. So we'll put this right about there, add it onto the lumber mill here, the station. You can see our little loading zone. All right. And it creates, because it's at the lumber mill, it's called an annex, which can't be upgraded. Okay, so we see it has, though, the lumber mill annex is a little edge there, but we do need to get a train. Remember, our route so far, we have 2 trains going back and forth from DC to Baltimore, and now we need to add a train that will get wood from the lumber mill and deliver it to Easton. So we need to add some cars. Let's add 4 for now. There's this wait until full option. We can select that. And sometimes you want to do this. This doesn't let the train leave the station instead of kind of being on a wait for a regular time. It waits until it's all full. So if you have, as you take some of this wood that's being piled up, it kind of waits for the lumber mill to refill its supply, fill up all the trains to deliver, which your maintenance of your train costs keep running, but you're running your track and your delivery. If you've got a long stretch or something like that, you're not running just a half full train. You can kind of wait until, if you're going a long distance, you can wait till you have a full train to take advantage of that, because your time is going to matter here. Since it's just a short little haul, I'm not worried about that one here. So it's going to pick up 4 here, and it's going to run back there. At this stop, it makes paper, and it will convert to paper. We could add paper to it and continue on to our other stations, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to let it pick up paper. It's going to run back and forth, hit OK. And then eventually there's going to be a paper supply coming out of Easton here. So you can see our supply of 6. This is the thing you have to keep your eye on. It said it had a supply of 8. And so we could have put 8 cars on here. But it's going to take a while to fill up that supply. And so we want to you're trying to balance, again, your supply and demand. So you can see, like in Baltimore, our passengers and our mail are just at 1 and 1 as this train's pulling into the station. So because we have the 2 trains with 2 passenger cars and the mail car each, the mail is piling up a little bit in Washington, so we might consider another mail car going that way. But again, our passengers are set. So we want to keep an eye on this. The train delivered our lumber here. It's going to start, the paper mill is going to start now making a supply of paper. And by the time the train gets back, we're going to be back up to our eight, perhaps, or real close to 8 wood. And you can see it takes a while. It loads all the pieces here. We took 4. We still have 4 left. I think this is going to be a fine amount. It takes just a little over the time it gets the train to get there, unload, and back and start loading to get those other 4. So we're not losing any efficiency on the lumber mill. All right, you can also purchase existing industries as well as create new ones. Buy the paper mill in Easton. All right, so as we expand our empire and we have more and more resources, one of the things you want to do and work on is expanding your industries. So you're not just running the railroads, you also buy the industries. So here, when I click on Easton, it shows me the industries it has, and I can start an auction to buy the paper mill. You'll notice the auction has started for the paper mill. You are currently the high bidder. If there were other players in this game, they would have an opportunity to purchase this industry by outbidding you. So in a multiplayer game, so everybody can bid on these industries, and then you can, have the competition of who owns which industries in which towns, and your trains. You can make money off of other people's industries, where if you own your own industry, you're going to make, you'll maximize your profit that way. Now that you've won the auction, watch deliveries being made to the paper mill. You'll see the green numbers on top of the paper mill for every delivery made. So every time there's a delivery, my paper mill, earns a little bit of profit. And that's because I own the industry. You make this money on all delivery, even if they come from a different player. So when there's other players delivering wood, again, to my paper mill, I would benefit from that as well. So you can make money off of your deliveries, your train industry, or your other industries. Alright, you can build new industries by clicking on the city and clicking the build button if it is enabled. It is extremely expensive to create a new industry, but you are guaranteed ownership and don't have to bid. So if you need a new industry or there's demand, For certain products, you can build the industry yourself, self-finance it, and then you're guaranteed ownership instead of having to do an auction with the other players. Depending on the size of the city, you may not be able to build a new industry. So you have to have a certain size. You can see in Easton, it's only big enough to support one industry. All right, and then new technologies arrive every once in a while. So we're going to place a bid on the McCoy lubricator patent. Halves maintenance costs on all trains. So that would save us maintenance costs. Alright, you have the exclusive right to its technology for 10 game years. After 10 years, it becomes part of the public domain, and all companies gain access to the technology. Once you win a patent or it becomes the public domain, it's applied automatically. So again, you don't have to upgrade your trains. You don't have to do kind of the micromanaging things. And then finally, the last part, or the next part they're going to tell us about here, is stock. When you started the game, you began with some cash. You may have noticed that you also started the game with some shares of stock in your own company. These shares can always be sold when you need some extra cash. You can also buy shares of yourself or someone else whenever you can afford them. So you can buy out your competitors, you can buy out your own stock, or buy back your own stock. Alright, click the competition button in the upper left-hand corner. So here we go, look at the competition report. So I'm doing a kind of the tutorial by myself. And then we can see you can sell or buy your stock. And this shows you kind of your ownership here. If there are other players active, you also see their stock and be able to buy shares in their company. If you're able to buy all the shares in a competing railroad, you will automatically buy them out, and everything that was theirs becomes yours. So you can win the game by buying out all the competition and being the last man standing. If all public shares have been bought, you can execute a buyout by paying double the current share price for each share you don't own. This is why it's advantageous to protect your company by owning as much of your own stock as possible. Alright, that's the end of our tutorial. Those are kind of the parts. Thanks for joining me on this tutorial. We'll end it here, a nice short one, just a view at Sid Meier's Railroads. Maybe we'll get into a little game here and try and build a little empire soon. So stay tuned, look for that video coming out. Otherwise, thanks for joining us, and you guys have a good day until next time.